One of the most important Batman storylines of all time is the death of the second Robin, Jason Todd. But 2.5 decades later, another Robin would fall in the line of duty, but nobody really talks about it these days. This is the story of the death and return of Damian Wayne, and unlike Jason Todd, who came back to life as the anti-hero Red Hood 17 years later, Damian came back just 1 year after his death, which is probably the major reason why it's become largely ignored. The resurrection storyline, though, is completely bonkers, but it has a lot of amazing action and is actually really impactful and heartwarming, so I think it's time that it deserves a proper spotlight. Hello and welcome to Comic Drake, where I talk about comic books and my name is Drake. Let's talk about it. But before getting too far into things, I want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Honkai Impact 3rd. Honkai Impact 3rd is a next-gen 3D open-world anime action game with a deep and immersive story. Like, I'm talking so deep that its main story is about to move into its 38th chapter. There are tons of ways to play, with everything from minigames to open-world exploration. But on top of that, the new update is kicking off with 2 big events, Chasing Light and Before the Endless Dream Ends, complete with Seal's new S-rank battlesuit, Hersher of Rebirth, and new costumes for Darkbolt Joni, Miss Teln, and Starlit Astrologos. Not to mention, there's a new card-based game mode with multiple factions that each have their own unique strategies to overcome. And on top of that, Honkai Impact 3rd will be at Gamescom from the 23rd through the 27th. Oh, and these events aren't just going to be offering in-game rewards, there is a big chance that you'll be able to win physical goodies as well, like art books. Honkai Impact 3rd is cross-platform by being on iOS, Android, PC, Steam, and the Epic Store. And if you use my code REBIRTH, the new players will get tons of rewards and bonuses to get started. So once again, big thank you to Honkai Impact 3rd for sponsoring the video, but now, let's get back to it. It's honestly surprising that Damian Wayne is a character that's still around today, because ever since he was first introduced at the beginning of Grant Morrison's run on Batman, it was their intention to kill him off almost immediately.
My plan was to kill Damian at the end of the 4-part story where he was introduced, specifically to dodge any accusations that I was making Batman seem older by giving him a son. I planned to have Damian learn his lessons quickly before dying nobly at the end of that first arc. As I got into writing him, however, I began to see much more potential for Damian. I saw how his development could instead form the spine of a story spanning years. I gave him a stay of execution and shifted the date of his grim demise downstream to the end of my overarching plot, where I hoped it would be more powerful in the context of his character progression.
And yeah, I think that's the general consensus for most fans, because when Damian was first introduced, he was an annoying little brat. But as time went on, he grew as a character and became a fan favorite, especially when Bruce got stuck traveling through time, because comics, and he became the Robin of Dick Grayson. The whole dynamic of a dark and brooding Robin but with a chipper and upbeat Batman was a fun dynamic that helped sand down Damian's edges, and when Bruce made his eventual return, he stuck around as his Robin. But on the other side of the coin, there's his mom, Talia al Ghul, the international crime lord and head of the terrorist organization Leviathan. She honestly thought that hanging out with Batman was just going to be a phase. So when Damian didn't come back to her, she did what any loving mother would do: place a $500 million bounty on his head. This fit of jealousy was meant to distract Batman while she enacted a global-scale conspiracy, but it was basically just a big middle finger to Bruce. Morrison explained that it was essentially a nasty divorce, but with a child stuck in the middle, cranked up to absurd levels. But this had the potential to be a massive misdirect, because that very same year, the main Batman comic got an event called Death of the Family, which marked the triumphant return of the Joker. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it's because the famous storyline where Joker killed Jason Todd with a crowbar is called A Death in the Family. So with that kind of title and that particular villain, fans brace themselves for history to repeat itself, but it didn't happen. It was a metaphorical death of trust within the Bat family. Still, there was that matter of the pesky little bounty. So to get the heat off their backs, Bruce and Damian faked Robin's death by letting one of the assassins think that they took him out. Meanwhile, Damian was benched, being forced to lie low in the Batcave while Bruce and the rest of the family put an end to Talia's conspiracy, leading to this massive climax where she and her henchmen took over a building and were holding a bunch of folks hostage. Desperate to try to help, Damian broke out of the Batcave with the full blessing of Alfred, which led to a really cute scene of him and Nightwing teaming up and reminiscing about how great they were as Batman and Robin. And I'm pretty sure that this is also meta commentary that's throwing shade at all the Damian haters in the fandom, which I love. See, that line and all the kick-ass teamwork between the two of them made it seem like everything was going real smooth. Like, the writing made it feel like this was going to be the big triumphant victory that would undo the death of the family and bring them all back together. And besides, readers already got a big fake out a few issues prior, so there's no way that anybody was going to die here, right? After most of her goons are taken out, Talia sends in her #1 enforcer, the Heretic. And this guy is strange. So when Damian left the League of Assassins to join Batman, Talia got to work on making an enhanced clone of her son that wouldn't leave her. So this dude is a big evil baby version of Damian, and when the two of them engage in one-on-one combat, it is brutal, even going so far as to recreate that iconic scene of Bane breaking Batman's back. In the end, Robin was taken out by a sword through the stomach, a moment that is immediately undercut by Heretic being defeated by Tim Drake, who shot him with a tank that he had hotwired that was just sitting in the building's lobby. Like, okay, let's just say you're going to be extra and have this thing as an over-the-top piece of decoration. Fine. But why was it loaded with live ammunition? Oh, and speaking of having this moment undercut, the New York Post completely spoiled Robin's death before the issue even came out. In the aftermath, every Bat and Bat-adjacent book got a one-issue Requiem story, and most of them did next to nothing with it, just a couple of pages acknowledging that Damian died and then moving on back to their original ongoing story. However, one of the books being published at the time was literally called Batman and Robin, so how does it work when one of their major characters isn't around anymore? Well, you got Peter Tomasi, who is a great writer, and his Requiem issue is a silent look into Bruce's pain at the loss of his son. It's heartbreaking and tragic, and to me, this issue of Bruce holding Damian's uniform is one of the most iconic moments of Batman's entire history. But that's not where the story ends. The book quickly becomes a revolving door of titles like Batman and Batgirl, Batman and Nightwing, Batman and Red Hood, etc. These issues dive into Bruce's anger at not having been able to save Damian. He becomes extraordinarily brutal and ruthless, but on top of that, he is on a single-minded mission to try and resurrect Robin. And what follows is one of the most comic books that I have ever read, and it's incredible. The first thing Batman does is kidnap Frankenstein, because yes, Frankenstein's monster exists in DC Comics and he is a secret agent. It's a pretty fucked up scene of Batman dissecting the monster to try and understand how he works. And when Tim Drake points out just how horrifying this whole situation is, Bruce straight up leaves, which forces Tim to have to learn how to patch up Frank together off screen. Next up, Bruce tricks Jason Todd into coming to the site of his death to try and jog his memory about the circumstances behind his own resurrection, which it didn't. And for those of you that are new to DC Comics, the whole reason that happened was because a powerful alternate universe version of Superboy punched a hole in reality, and Jason's resurrection was merely a ripple effect of that. Yes, I know how dumb this all sounds. But in case you thought that Jason was cool with being reminded in the worst way possible about being beaten to death with a crowbar and then blown up, you would be wrong. In the meantime, during all of this, Damian's body was stolen by his grandpa Ra's al Ghul in order for him to make more clone soldiers with the help of a mysterious crystal that he just so happened to have laying around. And naturally, Batman wants his son's corpse back, so he fights off Ra's and his army of assassins. But in the middle of the battle, an emissary from Apokolips shows up to take the crystal. However, since Damian's coffin was radiating the exact same energy from that whole cloning thing, the dude said, "Neat," and he took that too. Obviously, Batman was pretty pissed off that his son's dead body was stolen once again, and he decides that he's going to go get it again. This time though, the Justice League steps in and was like, "Bro, that is ridiculous, you are not going to Apokolips." So Bruce breaks into the Watchtower and stole an incredibly powerful batsuit that was built and enhanced by each member of the Justice League called the Hellbat. To make sure that Gotham was safe, Bruce entrusted the rest of the Bat family to watch over it in his absence, but they wanted to come anyway, so as soon as Batman went off to commit Grand Theft Armor, the gang forcibly outsourced their duties to Batwoman, who, yes, is technically a part of the Bat family, but she more so does her own thing. Like, she is so far removed that she didn't even get a Requiem issue. Anyway, after getting Batwoman to do their jobs for them, the Bat Kids lure Cyborg into the Batcave, hack his body to open up a boom tube to Apokolips, and they all don Robin-inspired costumes to go help out Bruce, and the cover of this issue is just so damn cool that it makes everything worth it. Meanwhile, Batman is a one-man army wrecking havoc across Apokolips, trying to find out where his son's body was being held, eventually discovering that it's being used to power a big gun, and Batman doesn't like guns. In order to save Damian's corpse, Batman had to trade blows with Darkseid, who is one of the most powerful entities in the entire DC universe, and when he fires off his Omega Sanction, the very same attack that previously sent Batman hurtling through time, Bruce uses the energy crystal to absorb it, which also supercharged the Hellbat armor. Bruce mustered up all of the power that he could and knocked Darkseid down with a massive bat-shaped energy blast, and he used this opportunity to teleport him and his team back home. And with the crystal still being souped up, he Uma Thurmaned it right into Damian's chest, which brings him back to life somehow. Oh, and Damian also has superpowers now. But before you get upset about how this ruins Batman and Robin, they only lasted for a couple of issues because he spent all the pent-up energy, but they were fun. Like, they're about how Damian is now super cocky since he's basically invincible, and he's completely ignoring all of the previous training that he had, which leads to massive conflict with his father. But yeah, the Batman and Robin comic ended its publication then and there, which this is one hell of a storyline to go out on. Batman literally went to hell and back. I honestly really dug all this stuff that came in the aftermath of Robin's death, but what's wild is that both in and outside of comics, it's never talked about. Like, there's a story where the Teen Titans pay a visit to Hell, and Robin knows how to navigate it like the back of his hand, because it turns out that's where he went when he died. Wow, that seems super important, would be like a traumatic experience to talk about. Does it get mentioned again? No. I also remember it being really weird that Damian's death and rebirth was never mentioned in his solo series, where he literally competed in the death tournament on an island that immediately resurrects anyone that's killed. I skimmed through the comic again just to make sure, and yeah, I didn't see anything. It is also a huge missed opportunity that Jason and Damian never bonded about being the two Robins that died and came back to life. Those kinds of interpersonal dynamics are what I love about these books. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love big action like the stuff in Invincible, but what makes that and so many other comics great are the softer moments of character work. And hey, maybe Damian has talked about this stuff in a book that I haven't read. I read and analyze comic books for a living, but I haven't read every issue on the planet. Hell, I am way behind on current stuff because I've been making so many videos lately about interesting older books. Regardless, the webtoon talked about it, and that's neat. But like I said, this is one of the most comic booky comic books out there, and while it's ridiculous and bombastic, it still has a lot of heart and is definitely worth a read. And hey, if you want more Batman goodness, then I have a playlist that is chock full of more videos just like this that you might enjoy. Thank you guys so much for watching, and hope to see you again soon. Same bat time, same bat channel.